Thanks very much for coming out to our talk today. This has been a talk that has been a long time in the making. It started about, I think, five years ago here at ITB Asia. I guess I need to introduce myself. I'm Matt Gibson. I'm the president of the Professional Travel Bloggers Association. And it was founded about 6 years ago. It was founded by a fellow named Mike Hodson. 5 years ago here at ITB Asia, Mike met Dileep from Cinnamon Hotels in Sri Lanka. He's their VP of marketing. And they hatched a maniacal plan to bring dozens and dozens and dozens of bloggers to Sri Lanka at one time for what was, I'm not totally sure, like I can't say for absolutely sure, but I think at that time it was the biggest group blogger trip in history. Not anymore, but at that time I think it was. And that's what we're going to talk about today. This is a case study. It's going to examine more about the most recent one. We've done two of them, one in 2014 and one in 2016. We're going to talk mostly about the one in 2016 and also about the cumulative effects that it had on tourism in Sri Lanka as a whole. So, Dileep is going to start us off here with some talk about tourism between Asia and Sri Lanka and the situation Sri Lanka was in about 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, this actually, according to the United Nations World Travel and Tourism Organization, UNWTO, given these figures, and it shows actually from Europe the number of tourists going to Asia. It's about 7, 8, 9 million. And sometimes in Asian region, the intra-regional travel is more than the inter-regional travel, and that's why the numbers are relatively low. If you look at Thailand is getting about 28 to 29 million tourists, but most are coming from the region. So what we try to do is actually how do we increase our market share? Looking at this context, looking at these numbers, how do we get the large numbers at least to push the destination moving forward in a very cost-effective way, looking at the hotels, looking at the destination. So if you look at again coming back to this, you will see the large pie is actually from Asian inbound tourism coming in. The yellow color is actually from Asia. The blue one is actually from Europe. So again, the problem here is that what we try to address through blogging is that creation of awareness in Europe and other continents using the travel bloggers to increase that blue margin into a large number. So if you look at it, if you look at today, the question of unknown places and the known places, we all know about these places. And if you go to a first-time destination, everybody wants to go there, click a picture and say, okay, I've been there. That's one of the bucket list. These things are changing more and more. But there are something called unknown places as well. If you go to the history, if you just go to Google and check, these are sites that people have not been for many years to all these places. And there's a trend that people actually move and like to go to these places, unknown places. And we saw a little competitive advantage where Sri Lanka can be positioned as an unknown destination because almost 60% of the country was completely taken by war for almost 30 years. So 2009, the war ended, and still people didn't know about it, and we saw an opportunity getting into these unknown places coming in. So these are some of the pictures which I have actually seen. And if you look at in Sri Lanka, which is a small country, 25,000 square kilometers, the north and east was completely unknown, and there were like miles and miles of beaches. You see only empty beaches, there are no people. If you look at it, some of these archaeological values, the historical places in the north area. And this is actually a particular small temple, over 2,500 years old, somebody who likes some culture. Again, in Jaffna city, it's called north of Sri Lanka. And it's called Batiklo. We have some singing fish. Again, some of those on the way to Jaffna, it's called Doric in Mana. So these are some of the issues that we faced. And then putting these unknown places, how do we do it? Not enough budgets to hit CNN, BBC, etc. But what would be the most cost-effective way of doing it? So that's the story is about.
Yeah, so coming into this, Sri Lanka was very much an emerging destination. They had just ended a long civil conflict that prevented anyone almost from visiting the country. Their tourism was about as low as it gets. So emerging destinations face a really unique set of problems. I spend a lot of time in emerging tourism markets in Asia, and this has really become clear to me over the last few years. There are some really basic things that they need to start to take care of before they can move on to bigger marketing projects. So one of the first things is that they have a lack of digital assets online. That means two things. One is that there is no information about the country really available online to a traveler. So if a person is searching for information about destinations and choosing where they're going to go, it's not just a matter of having good reviews and people saying they liked their trip there. Part of it is just having information, period, so that a person can feel comfortable planning their trip there. If you can't go online and look at WikiTravel and find, information about all the cities you want to visit, you're going to worry about you're just going to worry about visiting those cities. You're not going to feel really confident in choosing to go to that place. So just the lack of information is a problem. A second problem is that they don't have a lot of digital assets for working with media. They don't have a large bank of photos sitting online in a barber stock account waiting for PR people to come and download them. They don't have B-roll video. This stuff is all missing, and there's sort of basic building blocks for a tourism board to start working with. They have very limited online visibility. So there is very little discussion of an emerging destination online normally, and that's a really hard thing to change because it's a chicken or an egg problem. You need people coming to your country before people are going to talk about your country on social media with their friends, but you need people talking on social media before people are going to want to come visit your country. You have very limited referrals or endorsements. Again, with very limited tourism, there's just a small number of people who are usually very adventurous travelers visiting that destination and who are willing to recommend it to other people. You need to build up a stock of very visible recommendations that can be used by tour companies in their advertising, or that can be used by tour operators in their advertising, airlines, tourism boards. These are just really essential marketing materials that they're lacking. And generally speaking, these tourism boards are not going to be very experienced in managing large ad campaigns, which requires a certain skill set that's very expensive to learn through trial and error. So, out of that came those needs of Sri Lanka and the Sri Lankan market led Dileep and Michael, or I think Dileep first, to come up with a concept for TBC Asia.
Yeah. So we were looking at it, what the influencer marketing at the beginning in 2013 and 14, how actually we can leverage, and the first discussion actually took place not far from here with the then president of the Bloggers Association. We said, let's come out with something unique. The unique was actually creation of the biggest blog trip. Not only that, the interactive blog trip, so the bloggers also can learn something on daily basis. We had people flying from various social media sites, coming and teaching them or talking about what we call the evening cocktails, and they actually start learning something about it. And the second year, we improved that to become the largest, the Bloggers Awards. There were 10 categories. We had a large number of applications, and the Blogger Awards were actually more powerful and then more popular among the bloggers than the other ones. As a result, we got a lot of momentum. There are a lot of learning up to that point, but the travel blogger actually conference and the awards was a result of creation of these unknown places, creating the digital assets for the unknown places in a very cost-effective manner, and it really happened here.
Okay, so this is, I mentioned the four major problems faced by emerging destinations when they're marketing their tourism. These problems are really uniquely addressed by working with travel bloggers in a way that traditional PR working with press doesn't really do, and it doesn't do it nearly as economically. So the first problem is the lack of online digital assets. As we know, PR tends to be a little bit slower in its return. Articles take a lot longer to come up. They're fewer in number, generally speaking. Working with travel bloggers is fast. You bring people to your destination, you're going to start seeing action, activity, and trends on social media immediately while they're in the country, while they're there together, experiencing their trips together, tagging each other in their photos. And one of the really nice things about doing a big trip with a bunch of people who know each other is that they share so much more online because they're getting a lot of pictures of their friends that they're not usually hanging out with, and they share that stuff a lot more. It's very cost effective. Compared to running, the return that you get from traditional PR in terms of volume, in terms of eyes, most studies have concluded that working with bloggers tends to be a much more cost-effective way to produce a volume of online content. The other nice thing that you don't get from PR with travel bloggers is that in many situations, if you're operating your campaign correctly, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, is that your results, unlike PR, are guaranteed. You know what you're getting before you start. You're probably going to actually get more than you expected, but you're going to have a minimum that you can be sure of what you're going to get back from your investment, which is huge. Okay, second, the limited online visibility problem. Working with travel bloggers helps us in several ways. First, it's going to generally build buzz and brand recognition online. This works not only in a B2C way, but it also works in a B2B way because bloggers tend to be very involved with other travel industry people. We come to these shows, we walk around at these shows, unlike a lot of journalists. We're friends with a lot of the people in industry. We also tend to network with a lot of journalists and a lot of editors, which is a really good exercise in branding for an emerging destination that's hoping to get the attention of the editor of Nat Geo, or Don George, who is known for hanging out with a lot of travel bloggers, or Spud Hilton from the San Francisco Chronicle, also really well established in the travel blogging community. This is a really good way to get their attention, is by having people in their social circles visiting your country. This increases your destination accessibility. Like I said before, even if a travel blogger is not writing a post that's like, 18 reasons that you should go visit Sri Lanka, maybe they're writing, here's how you pack for a trip to Sri Lanka in the summertime or in the wintertime, or here are 8 tips for traveling around Sri Lanka by car, whatever it happens to be. That might not be an outright recommendation, but what it does do is give people interested in Sri Lanka the information they need to feel confident about planning their own trip there. And that information wasn't there before. That's really important. You're removing these barriers to purchase. This definitely helps SEO with backlinks, brand mentions, and buzz, which is a very secondary concern for a tourism board, but it is important for a tourism board to rank top for its destination. If it doesn't, it just looks like they're not doing their job properly. And it generates online word of mouth through social media. Like I said, these people are online talking to their friends, to their followers, and also to other industry people and other influencers, editors, and journalists. The problem of no or limited referrals or endorsements is, well, it's fixed quite obviously by creating a large number of blog posts that are mostly de facto endorsements for the destination. Even if they're not all positive, and they might not all be, there's going to be a large percentage of them that is. And you're going to have now endorsements. You're going to have quotes that you can use in advertisements for social credibility, or that journalists can use when they're researching stories about your destination. This is very useful stuff in your marketing. It also builds, like I said, a large body of accessible travel knowledge to help people traveling your country. And it provides influencers, especially, with the tools to inform their followers about travel in the country. So a person might be interested in traveling to Sri Lanka, or in my case, I had a trip last year to Bhutan. 3, 6, 8, 10 months after the trip, I continue getting people asking me questions about traveling to Bhutan because they remembered that I traveled there. They want some answers to their questions, and I'm equipped to give them these answers. When you bring 50 bloggers to a destination, this happens on an enormous scale. And the real thing about travel bloggers is that compared to a lot of traditional advertising campaigns, which have a lot of moving parts, require very large budgets, require a lot of research, these are relatively simple and inexpensive to execute, just to put it shortly. They're fairly easy to plan and execute, and they're much more cost effective. And if you're working with a limited budget, you're definitely going to be squeezing the most out of your budget by doing this. Okay. The case of TBC Asia.
Yeah, so let's basically, we had an objective and this is what is produced. So these are a large number of posts, and I actually can't go through everything, but you can see one by one the diversity of the posts that came in, the content and the originality of this, and also natural, and as a result it became believable. People actually start these pictures, made this nice, and how much, even if you had gone for a paid campaign, this amount of pictures and the content wouldn't have been possible to be generated. And this is what basically coming from all the bloggers who came in, and we were completely overwhelmed by the responses came in and the diversity that came in. So there were 57 bloggers, 5 days. We didn't put everyone together because too much. We had 4 different itineraries going to the 4 corners of the country, and actually they met only on the last day, not on the first day. And there were 4,900 tweets altogether, 56.5 million impressions on Twitter and Instagram, and we had 7.5 million plus reach. And if we had to do this on a paid campaign, it would have been almost impossible. It's more than the money, it's basically believability. All the people who are following them actually start looking at the destination, looking at the unknown places, and try to actually create bookings later on. And there were 65 blog posts and video articles, and still it's coming in because it's still relatively new in the bloggers language, and people are still coming and making different posts. And the increased media attention, the marketing collaterals, and the private industry blogger partnerships are most important thing. Actually here Cinnamon Hotels did not wait until the government or the Ministry of Tourism start their own activities. It's a private sector driven content generation activity, because we cannot sell only a room. It's very important that we start selling experiences and talking about the destination. So more to do with these lovely pictures coming in, and the airline got involved as well. This national carrier, they gave a lot of support. And then we also started coming in the more authentic way of traveling. We did not actually put them in all our hotels. We didn't do that. We went to beyond putting into hotels and getting them to experience really what others would really experience, or otherwise a local would have experienced. And the originality of those itineraries were something interesting as well. And these are some of the places. It's called the 8th Wonder of Sri Lanka, Sigiriya. And from that, I'll just take you like 6 key takeaways. It's very, very important. We learn in a hard way. The bloggers are professionals and their work isn't free. That's one thing we should know, even though we invite them. So I remember one of my colleagues actually in the team sent an email saying that, okay, by inviting you, we are expecting you to post 5 blogs, 3 Facebook posting, and 5 photographs, etc. And immediately the reaction came in and everyone started to pull out. So look, there's something wrong here. So we got the Travel Blogger Association involved, and it was not the way to communicate. And we understood that these, even though they are inviting them, making an expenditure, it's not the way to communicate. But there is a better way of telling them in terms of what you need, and it is not basically free. So we need to create certain elements where they also have to live, and we created that information in. Finding the right blogger is always difficult. There are bloggers and bloggers and bloggers and bloggers all over the world. It's very difficult to find the right type of people and get them to come to your destination. And there are different categories, and that needs a strong content development, a good itinerary in place, and also what is in it for them. That's something we need to look at it. And the Bloggers Awards and the type of judges that we had, we were able to develop a certain credibility, so they also could market it then. And more importantly, they were also meeting other partners in Sri Lanka. We invited all our competitors to come and sit and meet in the one-on-one blogger session, so they also get extra work within the process. So all content is not really good content. That doesn't mean that you just give you a picture or something for you to go and post it. They won't do that. It has to be something original. And creating the excitement is a more important thing. We had people talking about it, that whole excitement of the new destinations, the type of things they see on daily basis. It's not like tourist tour, just coming from morning and evening. Every day they had something different, which they have never seen in their lives. And it's very, very important as a commercial entity. We're having over 14, 15 hotels in Sri Lanka and Maldives. It's very important that when we're funding this whole exercise, there has to be a measurable KPIs. And what are those measurable KPIs, qualitative and quantitative, we put in place so that we actually reach that particular objective, and there was science behind it. The long-term relationships are still important. Still after 5 years, the relationship actually continue with the Professional Travel Blogger Association. All the bloggers who have visited had a wonderful time, so they had a word of mouth, which keep on, and we keep on doing campaigns with them even after the good ones who have given a lot of results to us. So we actually took them separately and developed campaigns, country-specific and the city-specific. And then also the important is the private sector taking the lead. So these are 6 most important case studies or the takeaways from the whole exercise that we have learned. So we're going to do the third one as well in 2018. And in 2013, we had 1.5 million total arrivals in Sri Lanka, which is very small. And then immediately we saw in 2015 to 17 how the Google search on Sri Lanka has increased and how the whole digital content has really contributed to everything. And then we are looking at, in 2017, 2.5 million tourists. The increase, actually, the large number of people start booking online, and this whole exercise actually had really helped the destination, obviously the hotels, and the rest of the people to put those digital content right on place. Let's look at this particular video.
So we can't take all the credit for the tourism change, but we will take all the credit if you want to give it to us.
Sound, please. Are the sounds? right. That's the last part of it. So we'll actually open for any questions, if you have any.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions about TBC Asia
minutes.
or working with bloggers in general for marketing? Yes.
Hello. We have a travel company in Mexico. We specialize in organizing multi-destination trips to the Mexican Caribbean, where we take people to do cool things like swimming with whale sharks, crocodiles, bunch of stuff like that.
Swimming with crocodiles.
Yes.
Okay.
So we, it's a kind of off the beaten track, non-mainstream activity, and unfortunately our tourist boards do not give us any support whatsoever. We organize 2 fam trips every year, and we bring a mixture of travel agents, tour operators that we work with, as well as, so far, traditional journalists from media. So we usually get commitments from the editors beforehand, before they sell them, and usually we get away with pretty good exposure with exchange for the trip itself.
Sure.
Because we have some pretty good content that's not available pretty much anywhere else.
Yeah.
What's the compensation scheme usually with the bloggers, if any? I mean, how does it usually work, or does it work based on case-by-case basis, or?
It is very much, it's very much a case-by-case basis. You'll probably find most of the bigger, most professional travel bloggers that have the biggest audience are going to almost always require compensation, but not always. There are situations where bloggers, they love travel, right? And you do offer something really unique. Myself, like, I love Secret Compass, the company. Are you familiar with Secret Compass? They're an adventure travel company out of the UK. They did the first tours in Afghanistan after they opened the borders, the first land crossing of Madagascar. I would go on a trip with them for free any day. My policy is generally, like, I will charge for a trip. But with those guys, I would do it just to do it. I mean, that's amazing. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. So it's going to depend on the person you're dealing with. It is a case-by-case. I would always recommend paying anyways, even if you don't have to, because if you don't pay, you really can't ask anyone to guarantee anything. If you do pay, even if it's $1, you now have a deal. You can say, I want this, 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 and this delivered by this time, and you can write out a contract. An extra $500 or $1,000 means guaranteed results, guaranteed deliverables on a contract that's done on time. And to me, that's more than worth it.
Okay, and the follow-up question is, does the association provide some sort of pre-screening, kind of matching market types with bloggers, or does that up to?
Yes, we do. So all of our members, like a journalism association, must meet a certain minimum standard in order to enter our association. It's based on a series of different indicators. So before they can get in, they need to meet those. That's the first thing. The second thing is we have a search engine on the site. So our search engine pulls in the information from their Google Analytics, from their Facebook, from their Twitter, from their Instagram. So you can search them according to their followings or their traffic, depending on what you're looking for, and where that traffic or where those followings come from, so that you can identify the bloggers that are going to best fit your target market.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? So if we have a second and nobody's got any questions, I really want to just reiterate a couple of things that most people don't really get about this kind of work. A lot of people have heard you can pay people, you'll get guaranteed results, that sort of thing. They get the basics. It's the intangible results that people overlook. So there's a few things I want to highlight real quick. One, it's a great opportunity to buy more material for your social media or for your marketing programs. If you pay, and most of you probably do pay, a photographer, a good photographer is going to cost you $1,000 a day plus travel expenses, generally speaking, in most Western countries. A travel blogger often will have a day rate that's between $300 and $800 per day. For that, they'll often include guaranteed coverage on blogs, social media. They will also usually include a certain number of photographs or a certain amount of video, depending on what they do, and you're going to get a lot more value for what you pay. The second thing is that working with a large number of bloggers in a row does really increase industry awareness of your destination.
Hi.
Oh, So we had time?
Time up, yeah.
Okay. And that's it, actually. That's all I had to say.
All right. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks very much for coming, you guys.
Thanks.